Hey all, Taves here, back playing some more Planet Coaster 2, and welcome back to Pamola Park. So, in this episode, we're going to be showing you how I kind of put this together, and how I got to the idea, and yeah, some of the little details and things that really kind of make it work. So stick around, we're going to take you through this whole process, and you'll see all the build and all of the details. So, really, basically, this works on the premise that you can attach things to rides, right? So you can attach things to anything that's a coaster or a flat ride. So all I really did was started off by kind of going, I want something that goes up in the air. So I used the Skywatcher Tower. And obviously, if you place something like that down, you can attach things to it, right? So all I then did was just kind of, as an experiment, went, how do I get something to follow the motion, and how much can it, how far away from that actual coaster can it be, or that building in this case? So as soon as you've attached something like that, that object, now as soon as that, if I put this into test mode, that object will track the motion of the thing that it's attached to, right? So all I really had to do was check to see, because this is the bit I wasn't sure of, like how far away can I be from the original attachment point. So if I go all the way up here, then we'll watch that. Obviously, that's a really tiny little object. But if we play the game again, we'll see that it doesn't really seem to care. The game doesn't seem to care how far away you are from that object. It's just going to track that motion. So likewise, the next thought was then, okay, well, what if I was to hide that in the ground? And originally, my first kind of build had a little bit of the tower sticking out. So if I hide that in the ground and then I do the same thing again, really we'll get to a point where, in fact, let's go a bit faster so you can see this kind of all happen at the same time. So it'll get to a point where, oh, hang on, we're not actually running, are we? Let's test it again. So it'll get to a point where it'll, the bit that you've attached it to, the viewing platform, will reach the highest point, and that is the highest point at which my object has reached. It's right up there, you can just about see it, and then it will spin around and rotate. And if I wanted it to be lower, obviously I can put this further into the ground. So then the next question really was, how many objects can you attach to that? I didn't know if there was a point at which attaching an object effectively to a building or a tracked ride or a flat ride would have some piece count limit. So I started off building some prototypes of a basket. Started this first version using some of the wicker pieces, so some of the sort of thatch pieces and wicker pieces from the, I think they're from the resort set. Sort of rotating them around, trying to get a bit of a basic structure. One thing that I had to keep doing, obviously it's really, really critical, you can keep an eye on that top right corner. I have to absolutely make sure that at all times I'm editing the building, so I'm in that same attached scenery group. So quite a few times had sort of built a little section, pressed play to let the game play, and watched it kind of lift up into the air, just to double check that I was getting it right. Lots of times actually I didn't get it right. There's a sort of snap to position option that you get quite often when you're putting objects together, and actually that was sort of the key to making sure that I was staying in the right group, because sometimes when I sort of felt like I was in the right group, I'd lose that that connection, I'd build a whole section and it wouldn't fly up with the rest of the basket. So yeah, here's my first kind of prototype of the basket. I've divided it into 4 sections. I've got some of the stone statues in there to give it a bit of scale. And then again, I'm sort of at this point still just kind of thinking there's going to be something that's going to screw this over and I'm going to get stuck. So I thought I'd build a little prototype of a balloon. Needed to get the scale of this right as well. So wanted to sort of see what the best way to build a balloon was. I'm using some of the arc shapes here, the sort of angled arc shape there. And there's my sort of first test flight. And you can see, I think the balloon is quite small really. So initially I thought, okay, well maybe I scaled down the basket. I noticed that I could use these 2 baskets, can actually scale up quite big, but they don't get particularly big. So I played around with this for a while. I really liked the fact that it was sort of shaped more like a basket and that it had that sort of curvature to it. Couldn't really work out how to sort of factor in the top section of that and make this connection look really great. And then it looks like, basically ends up being only sort of 2 sizes, 2 people big enough. So it was a bit small really. So I thought, well, I'll use this prototype to test out some of what my kind of rockets might look like. And I used the cylinder piece there, put a bunch of different bits and pieces on it. I've used a bunch of the metal support pieces for this sort of top structure. And then just trying to get to a point where it looks like a kind of funnel really, and looks like a jet of flame coming out of a tank sort of thing. These sort of look a little bit weird, but these light pieces actually worked quite well. They do end up quite good sort of version of a sort of grated thing here. Yeah, and I was really keen to make sure that I was sort of transforming it enough. I think that's always the key when you're using a shape that's not meant for its purpose, is just to do enough with it so it doesn't look like the original thing. It has this amazing little tap on the bottom of it, this sort of little metal tap that you can just see there at the bottom. And then I wanted sort of, like a rope. I think that's the thing you see is in hot air balloons, they sort of pull on a rope and that opens a valve and that then turns the jets on or puts the jets higher and lower. A couple of lantern pieces in the top actually, or these kind of kind of rusticy lantern things. And then obviously the most of the effect is sold by the fire jets themselves. But I wanted that to be there was a lot more involved in that, and you'll see when we get to the end, sequencing and all that sort of thing is really important. Then I found this market piece. So this is actually one of the I think it's like rugs or something, or sort of tapestry material. So there you can see me just testing that. I'm actually definitely still attached to the ride here. And this piece, this market piece decoration, was the thing that really then landed it. It's got these amazing little ropes on it. It can be kind of made plain enough to sell the idea, and then just really trimming it in with loads of these extra. I think they're supposed to be sort of almost like swagged carpet and stuff. I'm not really entirely sure what they're supposed to be, but they work perfectly for this. So copying that all round, getting 4 sides on it, you can see it's a much bigger platform now, so I can much more sort of convincingly use it for this purpose and make it look like it would be a thing that could feasibly be in a park like this. And then a lot of it is then just like selling the idea with the details and stuff. So these are slightly more thematic than I think actually like would really get used, but sandbags and stuff on the outside of it, bits of details to just make it look interesting. I end up actually, what you've seen in the very intro there is the version of it without a kind of winch cable, and I end up adding a winch cable to it, mostly because I did find a few places in the US that had hot air balloon rides. But what they typically had was that hot air balloon was tethered to the ground in 4 points, in sort of, angled off from the bottom of the basket. Now, I tried everything I could possibly do to make that work, but if you can imagine, if you've kind of created a sort of triangle there between the land and the basket, as the basket rises, the triangle gets further and further away from the point of origin at the bottom of the ground, if that makes sense. So it's sort of became really impossible to do it. I played around with a few ideas around sort of whether I could have some sort of multi-point like anchors at the bottom, but it never really worked. I can't remember if I've got a bit of footage that shows this, but at one point I did have it tethered to the ground in 4 places, but as it went up, it just kind of didn't really work. So I do end up with, and you'll see this right at the end, you won't see this in the speed build, but there's some details and stuff at the end where I've sort of integrated it back into the park a bit more. But you'll see kind of a sort of implied winch system, because they would have it sort of use the rockets to sort of burn its way up, or obviously put hot air into the balloon to have it rise, and then it would be tethered, and a combination of the winch pulling it back down and obviously the cooling of the air inside. So a little bit of a ladder. You can see I'm starting to put some details in, so I've got a little bit of putting some. This is supposed to be like an esky or a sort of water cooler, for drinks and things for people going up. So I just thought it was I mean, I don't really know how this happened, to be honest, as an idea. It just came to me as an interesting thing, that not something that I've seen anybody else do. Maybe other people have done balloons and stuff so far, but I've not seen anyone use the sort of game mechanic like this before. So yeah, it's all starting to come together now. So there we go, just testing the rocket, burns by itself, lifts off the ground. I'm really happy with the way that they came out, actually. The tanks and all of these little bits and pieces that look like you could feasibly control that. And then we need some, at this stage we need some system. I'm pretty happy with the basket now. That's the final version of the basket we're going to do. I need some system of attaching the basket to this top section and then anchoring that all into the balloon. Obviously, we've not started actually building the proper balloon yet. So these cable pieces and the little kind of wire sections and the little tethers and stuff like that, all I thought worked really well. Again, I had a few different versions of this. You can see in the background there, actually, I have this little tower that I'd constructed, and this was originally, the plan was that the top of the sky tower was going to be above ground, and I was going to try and make it kind of winch up from that. But the problem is that the sky tower, if you think about the way that the viewing platform on the sky tower works, it doesn't go straight up, it actually goes up and rotates. So that means there is no way for me to not have the balloon rotate, and therefore attaching it to a tower has to mean attaching it to something that's rotating, if that will make sense. Here's another attempt at me trying to get, this is not by any means me trying to get the right sort of balloon done, but I'm trying to get a scale, because I've already looked at that balloon behind and thought, it's still not right, still doesn't look like it's a big enough kind of capture of air. This doesn't either, so I'm sort of getting, okay, maybe if that was sort of teardrop shape from that size, come back over here and look what it looks like from the view. And really I end up, and this was probably the biggest point of worry in this whole thing was, I'm going to have to build the balloon out of art shapes physically, just translate the shape. And it wasn't necessarily the problem of doing that. It was much more that I was absolutely assuming that at some point I was going to hit the build limit of what you could add onto a coaster. And I don't. And this ends up getting up to something like, I think the total build is something like 9,000 pieces in the end. So it's a big one, and I'm not sure that will get up onto the workshop. But yeah, it doesn't actually end up being a problem at all, and the performance and all of those sorts of things is not a problem. That was the other thing I was worried about. If I made this balloon really complex and then when I lifted it off the ground it crashed the game, that would be the end of my dream. And we'd have no balloon. So I built half of it. Here you see me building the bottom half of the balloon. I've still got the other one in the background there just to give me a sense of how much bigger I'm getting. So yeah, I built this bottom half. I thought, well, let's do a test flight with half of the balloon, see how this works. And it's still fine. It's all still good. And I'll come back over here and I look at the scale and I'm like, yep, all of that looks perfect. That's the picture I had in my head. So then we've just got to finish the balloon off, and it's and tether the balloon to the basket. Okay, so the final result I'm really happy with. So that's the picture I had in my head when I started this idea. That picture of it kind of rising up over the entrance as guests come in and sort of thing. So you can see the cable there. We'll go over and have a detailed look at it. And as I said, it all performs really well. There's no issues. It's nicely kind of animating up into the sky. It doesn't seem to be lagging my game out. We'll see when we get much more going on. And as you can see, I've added. Oh, there's a little floating child there. Interesting. These two are floating away. Maybe inspired by the balloon. Hopefully they're not. I don't know what's going on there. We'll just ignore them. I've put a bit of a temporary path in just so we can get over there when we're having a look at it. And eventually there will be obviously things here that kind of bridge this gap. But yeah, I put a little bit of made it look like it's somewhere that guests might actually want to come. And it looks like it's actually a bit more of a kind of ride and things. A bit of detail in here. Hopefully we'll get over there just as it's starting to come down. But yeah, we've got a little kind of entrance way. I might end up with some sort of queue system or something here. I haven't entirely worked out how I'm going to do that. Just did this little sign. It looks like the font pieces are not loading great in this view, but yeah, it's supposed to be. There's a little sort of, I think, a thing I'm going to have in all the rides just to show kind of their levels and stuff. So yeah, it's called the Skyrocket. Oh, yeah, thank you, game. And as we go in, this is supposed to be just a little holding area. Supposed to be for, if you weren't going up in the balloon, maybe you're a family member or something that you'd hang out and have a drink, maybe sit and watch your family go up there. It doesn't last that long. It's only about 2 minutes or something that it goes up and comes back down again. Just a bit of scenery and detail in here. As I said, it'll all kind of get stitched in at some point. So yeah, it's supposed to be that, as I said, that we're waiting for it to come down. It's coming down too fast. The rockets fire it's all very SpaceXy. I'm pretty sure this is not really how they work. And the little kind of plume of dust that pops out. And then we've got this, one of the things that I was really struggling with actually, because I was really trying to get, so this is obviously supposed to be, the idea is that this winch system is the thing that's pulling it down. But what I couldn't get to happen is that obviously this has got to go, as the rockets fire and the basket takes off, I want this turned in a different direction, but I couldn't seem to work out how to do that. I can't work out whether I was doing something wrong or what. But the rotational, the rotating pieces only have, you can only set them to one option, so you can only have them go in one direction. And I couldn't work out if you could do that with the event sequencer. Obviously, all of the things that happen here. Oh, this is supposed to be that. Yeah, it's supposed to be that the cable's running. There's a machine that's feeding the cable or pulling the cable, goes in this channel, comes out over there, winds up through the up into the basket. So yeah, it's always permanently tethered. But yeah, as I said, that the sequencing, all of the sequencing of the rocket, or the jets going off, and all of the sequencing of that rotation, everything is all part of the event sequencer of the ride. even down to this little rotating cable thing here, because obviously I wanted to make sure that as this is one of those the challenges is like, because the rotational speed of this is entirely different to the rotational speed of this, which is totally different, different speed that winch system goes. At one point I was playing around the idea of like, could I have something that kind of moved around down here? But it was all just getting a bit complicated. And I wasn't entirely sure whether I preferred it without the cable or not. You'll have to let me know in the comments. I will try my best for anyone who's interested to get this up on the workshop. If you are interested in having a look at it yourself or playing around with it yourself, let me know, and I'll do what I can to get it up on the workshop. I don't generally put these sorts of things on the workshop really, but hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Bit of a weird one, I know. It's not your normal Planet Coaster type thing. It's a hot air balloon, for God's sake. But who knows? Maybe we'll do a coaster at some point. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that one. My name is Toves. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Take it easy.